when you think of the word freedom, what comes to mind? Today we'll be going on our second episode of Luke chapter 4, 18 through 21, on light and darkness, where we're taking the second part, the next part of the passage, which talks about freedom for the prisoners. It's a promise that was said by Jesus after he proclaimed good news to the poor. He said his second purpose was to bring freedom for the prisoners. And so the first question that comes to mind, Dad, for me is, how is freedom defined?
Mm-hmm.
The second question is, who are the prisoners?
Mm-hmm.
And so going to the first part, how is freedom defined? There are many measurements that can define freedom from a limited human point of view.
Right.
Of course, we know that the freedom that Jesus was talking about was the freedom in eternity. But also, he promised freedom here during our short life is a vapor, but still, he proclaimed freedom while we were on earth here. But the freedom, I believe, is the real freedom, which is as soon as we slip into eternity, that's the freedom that he's promising to those prisoners that that he came to release. And so talk to us a little bit about the types of freedom that the world can define and also the real source of freedom that Jesus is defining.
Yes. Yeah. Well, freedom, as you said, like if we, for example, if we think in the term of a 14 years old teenager, okay, 14 years boy or girl, for him, freedom to him is just to be unleashed, to go to do smoking and marijuana or something. To him, that is a total freedom. Dad, let me enjoy my life, okay? But the real freedom, even it's not just releasing from an addiction. Okay, that's another prison there, but also it's freedom. But a true freedom is when the mind is renewed, the heart is changed from a stony heart to a loving heart, when there is forgiveness and when there is peace in the midst of a violence, when there is a storm and that person, he is laughing, joyful, and not caring about what's happening either. That is what Jesus is talking about, freedom. Freedom from sin, freedom from slavery. And there are so many kinds of prisons, so many kinds of slavery today. And let me just read what Jesus mentioned about this. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me." And this, not only Jesus said it, it was Isaiah who prophesied about it, about the coming of Christ, and he will set us free. So when he arrived, Jesus, he declared it publicly. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach." Who anointed? God, his Father. He has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. And he did came and he preached the good news. And now what we are doing, we are just passing those good news to the people who are watching us. Because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Yes.
Well, I was actually just thinking of something as you were reading that, and I'm already contradicting myself within the first 2 minutes of the show. But sometimes that's how God works. And he reminded me that freedom for the prisoners, I assume that's the way that God works. Freedom for the prisoners, freedom, and it was actually something that C.S. Lewis also confirmed in one of his writings. But freedom, actually, there is no freedom here on earth. If you believe you have freedom here on earth, it's only being measured by your intellect, the capability of your intellect, the understanding of where you stand in your heart, and the limited glimpse of the spirit that you think that you have, the weak spirit that we have. It's strong, depending on how we measure, but it's really weak relative to our potential when we slip into eternity.
As long as we are in this physical weak body,
yes,
then there will be always any kind of slavery.
right. So there is really no freedom except the assurance that what's going to happen when we slip into eternity, which is driven by our faith.
But Jesus said, I have been sent by heaven, by his Father, to what? To proclaim freedom. The freedom, there is a temporary prison and the eternal prison. And he's talking about the eternal one, of sin and slavery and the hell, the fire of hell. So he came for this purpose. He came and became man, like me and you, to go on to the cross for this sake, in order to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind. Yes.
Okay, and so let's continue on the discussion of freedom for the prisoners.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the freedom that the world promises and the world gives and the world assures us.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of
for example, let's talk in politics now. Okay.
I hate politics.
I know that. I know that.
It's unbearable to me.
But that's what we have in the news. That's what we, all this like pain and suffering and persecution, oppression, it's coming from politics, okay? Either from dictators or jihadists or whatever. So even I forgot what I was trying to say.
The different forms of freedom
yes.
That the world offers.
Right. So like most of the countries in the Middle East, okay, those who were ruled until now, ruled by dictators. See, people, they want freedom. They said, we are fed up with this dictator. And they cry out to the West, please help us. We are oppressed. We are persecuted because of these dictators. And like, for example, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, Hafez al-Assad in Syria, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, al-Qaddafi in Libya, and in Sudan. So what their people of those countries in the Middle East, they were crying for democracy, crying for freedom. But in reality, the majority, they were liars. They do not want freedom. They do not want democracy. They were asking the West to remove those dictators. Once those dictators will be removed, then they want them to be in power. And that's why now all this Islamic fundamentalist group, they came, like, for example, a Brotherhood of Islam in Egypt, and in Shiite, like in Iraq, and now ISIS. Really, they do not want democracy. They do not want freedom. They want to stay in darkness, but they could not remove that dictator. So they kind of like put a mask, and they said, we are under severe oppression. This dictator is destroying the million of people. Please come and help us. United Nations, Obama, America. And what we do here in the West, we go spend hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to remove those dictators, thinking that if those dictators, they have been removed, like Saddam or Mubarak or whoever, then the people will be free. Then the people will have democracy. Then the people will live a better life. What happened is, instead, at least when was that dictator ruling, there was order and there was stability. Now it's turned into chaos. No order, no stability. Sunni killing Shiite, Shiite bombing the mosques of Sunni, ISIS beheading everyone, and everyone is in chaos. And see, because they were not really, they do not know what's the meaning of freedom. And even here, look, we do have democracy, but look, this democracy and this freedom, how we turned. It turned into disobedience, family dismantle, and the society is going downhill.
I,
Yes, you disagree. Go ahead.
I agree and I disagree. I both. I'm on both sides. You need both. I don't know if democracy exists. I know that dictatorship exists. The idea of dictatorship, if at the end of the day we will always be in slavery and always be prisoners until the moment after our final breath, which we slip into eternity, and hopefully those who have accepted the truth slip into the good eternity. Until that moment, we're all prisoners and we're all under this form of slavery. Now, regardless of where either of us stand, if democracy or if dictatorship is the right solution, I don't think that that's the type of freedom that Jesus was talking about.
No.
I don't think he was talking about a political system. I don't think he was
Not
talking
at
about
all.
I don't think he was talking about an ideology. I think he was talking about the source, which is at the individual level. But even the way that humans have, from the start of the episode, I said the truth is masked with confusion. And the reason that is because humanity has created a system in order to purposely and intentionally confuse the truth. To why? To steer the masses in the wrong direction. And so it has to start at an individual level. If somebody wants to learn the truth, they have to hit the mute button on the world and hit the mute button on this whole fight of democracy versus dictatorship, and hit the mute button on CNN and Fox 2, and really zoom in and try to understand what the truth is behind this freedom that Jesus is claiming, with the acceptance and understanding that they will never experience that true freedom until the afterlife, driven by our faith. That's the only way that you're going to experience a glimpse, I believe, of this freedom that Jesus is talking about. Whether democracy is the solution or all these cheap words that are used to define something that's going on in the world is neither, it's not only irrelevant, but it's costful to have those discussions because they're cheap discussions that dilute the message of Christ, in my
Yes,
mind.
yes, I agree. And you said about the truth. And for example, where is the truth? Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he is the only way and the truth. But look, do we see, who can say, yes, I agree with Jesus? Because the whole world is falling apart into this darkness. And you said about the freedom. Really, if we believe in him, and if we follow him, and if we are born again from the Spirit of God, then that's where will we set free. Because Jesus said, if the Son of Man will set you free, you will be free indeed. Now, the freedom that Jesus is talking about, it's different from the freedom in the schools, or freedom in the streets, or freedom in demonstration. Okay, what's happening like in Missouri or in California or in Chicago or here and there. So, but can I just share with you also, Jesus did say when he started giving hope to the hopeless, okay, because they were oppressed by the Roman empires, and they thought that Jesus is going to set them free from politically from the oppression of Roman empires. Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. I want you to put a red line under this word, righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And finally, he said, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I mean, let me just read the last one, two. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kind of evil against you because of me. Rejoice. He say, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I have a story to tell later on about this last thing. He said, Jesus said, because great is your reward, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I'll talk about this one, but go ahead.
Yeah, you can go ahead and talk about it now because we're actually...
Okay. You know, they did persecuted the prophets. They did until today. How many religions, okay, they are killing, beheading in the name of Allah. And one of the YouTube videos, it shows, it's very sad. It shows like a group of like 30, 40 innocent people, Yazidis and Christians and just innocent people. And they were executed by ISIS. But look, in the name of Allah, okay, well, Jesus said, they persecuted the prophets before you. What they did when they were executing, they had their own guns, 10, 15 terrorists of ISIS, and 30, 20, 30, and they were blindfolded and bound their hands from their back. And before they executed them, they said, bow on your knees, okay? In order, before they kill them. And they said, Salli, which means pray. And then after that, they executed them. And while they were executing them, they were saying, Bismillah, 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 like in the name of Allah, in the name of Allah. And after killing them, they were praising Allah, saying, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah the greatest, Allah the greatest. You see, killing them in the name of Allah. Oh, in the name of God. That's why he said, in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So Jesus is saying, rejoice. Rejoice if this happened to you. Because here's where it started. He said, yours will be the kingdom of heaven. You will be comforted. You will inherit. You will be filled. You will be shown mercy. You will see God. And you will be called the children of God.
And these are all promises. And
Yes.
let's say points of persuasion for the average weak human, that they say, yes, it's a promise. Yes, it's an acquisition. Yes, it's a possession. Yes, I will gain this. Yes, this is a reason. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, even if that paragraph was not in the Bible, God still expects us to obey because we're His creation and He created us for His purpose and His purpose only. So now my question for you is, today's topic is freedom for the prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
And you just gave that graphic example of ISIS shooting in the name of their religion. And the question is, do you consider ISIS a prisoner?
Of Of course.
Do you
They
consider?
are in the heart of the prison, the dark prison.
So is this freedom that Jesus is talking about for the Yazidis or for ISIS or for both? Or neither?
No. Number one, these promises, before I forget, that I read from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, these are not only for the eternity, these also are for here. These are also for here. The true followers of Christ, he is enjoying the peace and the spirit and the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven starts from here, not from there. Okay, that's number one. Number two is the prison. It's anyone who is a slave to sin, he is in a prison. Whether if he is American or Yazidi, if he is Chaldean or from Africa. Jesus is not talking about ethnic or geographical or nationality. He's talking about freedom in the spirit. Are you slave to sin? Are you slave to Satan? Then you are a prisoner. And that master of that prison is Satan. And that has been conquered on the cross. Now it's up to you. Would you like to be free? Come to me. But before Christ, before coming to this world, no one was able to be free from that enemy which we call him Satan. But after the death and resurrection, then the way to heaven is open, and our names have been written in the book of life from today, not another 1,000 of years after eternity. Yes.
Many questions, many unanswered questions, and I think that this discussion, can continue to go on, and I'm sure that the viewers have questions as we continue these series, because if all the questions were answered, then things would be a lot more simpler than they are. But I think that God not only expects us to obey him, but it's a healthy wrestle with God as we ask and try to understand. He wants us to be sharp intellectually. He wants us to be on our toes and aware, yes, as harmless as doves, but as wise as serpents, because the days are dark, and the enemy prowls around like a roaring lion, waiting to devour us. And the job description, as we've discussed in the past, is to only, the job description of the enemy is to kill, to steal, and destroy. And so, agreements and disagreements are both healthy, and questions are a necessary way to try to understand more of what it is that God wants us to hear in his voice.
But till now, if anyone who is still, he thinks that he is a slave to anything, slave to addiction, slave to sex, slave to gambling, slave for sin, slave for ISIS, slave for another religion, really, the door is open and Jesus is knocking on the door, and he says, here I am standing at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in. I will give you freedom. I will give you joy, and I will give you a true test of life. No longer you will be bitter or hatred or other things of life. And there is a true meaning. And he said, I have come, to not only to set free, but also to give life abundantly, abundant life, the best life. And only few have chosen that narrow way.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, we thank you to our viewers for tuning in. Again, we are looking at Luke chapter 4, verses 18 through 21, and we're just asking some very frank questions here on light and darkness so that we can better understand the scripture and better understand this message that Jesus is trying to teach us and how to apply it to our daily lives during our short time on this earth. So we thank you for joining us on Light and Darkness, and we'll see you next time.